Hi there, and welcome to this special installment of the Department of Uniform Magical Practices Instructional and Informative Series. So, you're a newly turned vampire. In this video, we'll be exploring the logistical aspects of your new life as a vampire. To start, at the most general level, there are three groups of newly turned vampires. Those who were unempowered and had no prior knowledge of the magical world until this event. Those who were unempowered but knew about the magical world, in most cases carrying an informed unempowered status. And lastly, those who were already empowered. Before we start, it's important to identify which group you are a part of. This video is intended for individuals who already have an understanding of magic as a concept and a knowledge of the magical world at large. Any individual falling into the first group we identified, those who were unempowered and had no knowledge of the magical world, should have already watched our other informative videos on the subject of magic and the magical world before beginning this video. If you fall into that group and have not yet watched those lessons, please pause this video and ask your department coordinator to provide those videos to you first, in accordance with the department's standard lesson plan. If you're still watching, it should be safe to assume that you already have a working knowledge of magic as a concept. Am I right? Great. Then let's get started. So, you are a newly turned vampire. There are a lot of different scenarios that could lead to a person being turned into a vampire. And before we go any further, it's important to acknowledge that those circumstances can have a lot of different emotions associated with them. For some, being turned is a joyous occasion. For others, that's not the case. If you identify more with that second statement, we want to stress to you that the department has resources that can help. If at any time after viewing this video, you need emotional support beyond that afforded to you by your maker and your current support system, please reach out to your department coordinator to make arrangements. Please also note that while this video is designed to be informative, it is intended to serve as an introduction to the realities of being a newly turned vampire, not an exhaustive guide. Traditionally, a newly turned vampire's maker will fill that role instead. However, if you feel for any reason that your maker either does not or cannot fill that role, again, please reach out to your local department coordinator so that we can get you the support that you need. Even for individuals that were previously empowered, being turned is a drastic paradigm shift. But we're here to help. So let's start simple. Biological changes. Vampires are empowered humans. Just like other empowered humans, they have a magical core. They produce a magical aura, and they have threads of power that connect their core to the magical plane, known as aria. But there also are some big differences between vampires and other kinds of empowered humans. Vampires' magical cores are unique in ways that we still don't fully understand. The act of being turned is the only known way in which an unempowered person can be granted a magical core, and by extension, control over magic. But interestingly, even if a person was already empowered, the act of being turned fully replaces their original core with a vampiric one. As a result, any kind of magical specialization they may have held, like being a dreamwalker, an elemental, a shifter, or any others, will effectively be erased when they're turned. All vampires share the same basic magical abilities and constraints, regardless of what they may have been before being turned. In turn, the starting strength of those abilities is dependent on the relative strength of their maker, which is largely a function of their age, and, by extension, the age of their own maker at the time of their turning. But just what kind of abilities are we talking about in the first place? Good question. To start, let's take a quick look back to the magical taxonomy system we touched on in a prior video. In the magical world's classification system, all human-empowered individuals fall under the class human-empowered. Makes sense. But one step down the taxonomy, we have order. A person's order is based on the relationship between their magic and their core. For example, I'm a magneto-energetic. As a result of that, I'm part of the family elementals and energetics. The family elementals and energetics are all in turn part of the order physically intrinsic magical practitioners. Physically intrinsic, in this case, means that my magic is stored exclusively inside my magical core. I can externalize that magic in countless different ways that expend it, but my core is where all of my magic is stored until it's called upon. Most empowered humans fall into the order physically intrinsic magical practitioners. However, vampires are part of the physically extrinsic magical practitioners. Shifters are also part of this order. All empowered humans within this order have a physically extrinsic relationship between their magic and their core. What this means in practice is that their magic is not solely stored in their core, but instead is infused in every part of their body. For them, the core serves as an anchor point for their threads of power, but one which then redistributes that stored magical energy throughout the entire body. In the case of shifters, this is what allows them to fully shift into their alternate form, and to then maintain it without significant sustained effort. It's the fundamental difference that makes it so easy for them to transform, while it's practically impossible for a non-shifter to do so completely, or for any extended length of time. Vampires are also physically extrinsic magical practitioners, meaning that their magic is also stored throughout their body. But in their case, that magic is bound to them in significantly different ways. Namely, while a shifter's magic is held in their body as potential, a vampire's is in use at all times, infusing every cell of their body with magic continuously, and in doing so, granting them their unique abilities. Which leads us to the fun part, the abilities in question. As a vampire, you have superior strength, speed, senses, reflexes, and healing ability compared to other humans, including empowered ones. All of these biological abilities will grow stronger as you age, and their starting power level will have been dictated by your maker, as previously stated. Vampires are also biologically immortal. While vampires can still be killed through purposeful or accidental means, barring any of those circumstances, a vampire will live indefinitely. Vampires also have access to one kind of magic that is exclusive to them: trancing. We'll talk about that ability in more detail in just a bit. But before we do, it's important to remember that as a vampire, you have the same responsibilities that all empowered humans do, just like we touched on in prior videos. Magic is an incredible gift that affords us amazing opportunities, but it comes with serious responsibilities. Covert is essential to our continued existence as empowered individuals. And while, as a vampire, you'll have access to unique tools to aid in maintaining covert, you will also face unique challenges in maintaining it that other empowered humans don't have to deal with. Your need to feed on human blood has the potential to put you in far more circumstances that put covert at risk, and your ability to turn other humans, including unempowered ones, into vampires represents one of the greatest risks to magical covert in existence. It is imperative that you use your abilities mindfully and responsibly for the continued safety of all magic users, yourself included. But let's move on to the logistics. You're a vampire. What does that mean for your day-to-day life? The unempowered world has a lot of different interpretations of what vampirism is like, and depending on your background before being turned, you may have internalized some of those assumptions yourself. So let's get into them. Vampires survive on blood. Human, primarily. While animal bloods can offer temporary sustenance, they're largely inefficient and can't sustain a vampire for any meaningful length of time. Vampires can still consume human food, and many choose to still do so regularly, but it no longer will provide you with any nutritional value. So from a sustenance point of view, it's unhelpful. That just leaves human blood. It can come from either unempowered or empowered humans, and it functions equally well from either source from a nutritional perspective. Human blood can traditionally be sourced through two means: from blood bags or directly from a human, as a part of the department's ongoing efforts to support and serve the vampire community. There are department-organized donation programs that allow us to provide a blood bag stipend to any vampires that are interested in them. However, it should be noted that despite continuing efforts to increase donation rates, these resources are still fairly limited. Department-distributed blood bags, while an important resource, will not be enough to sustain you completely. You will need to get additional blood through your own means. Those means can vary widely, and we won't go through all of them in detail. There are non-department organizations that facilitate direct donations, and there are a variety of web and mobile applications designed to help pair up donors and vampires, among the many options. But for the purposes of this introduction, we'll only be really digging into the option that presents the most risk to covert, and so has the most rules that it's important to outline: direct feeding from unempowered humans. By department law, empowered humans may only be fed on with their explicit permission. However, unempowered humans have different protections under department law. You don't need an unempowered human's permission to feed on them for the purposes of sustenance, but only if the following requirements are met. You cannot take more than a pint from that human. The feeding cannot be conducted in a way that leaves any lasting harm to the person. You cannot feed from that human for another 60 days. you must trance the human afterward to erase any memory of the feeding having occurred. And you cannot leave any other tangible evidence of the interaction. Effectively, it has to be like the feeding never occurred. While these restrictions might seem lengthy, feeding from unempowered humans is still the most common way by which vampires feed, and that's for a number of reasons. Among them is the fact that trancing is a skill easily learned, and its use makes the entire process quick and simple. In fact, let's take this opportunity to talk about trancing. Trancing is a type of magic that can only be wielded by vampires. It's a powerful skill with many applications, and like all magic, its use should be treated with the utmost respect. Trancing is a form of mild mind control, generally with suppressive uses. Functionally, it is limited in its ability to make people do things. Rather, it excels as a means of prevention. Trancing is traditionally used to keep a person from moving or talking, which facilitates a quick, harmless feeding. It also has the added ability of allowing for limited memory modification. True memory modification is far too complicated for these means, and it's a skill that is actually only usable by demons. But trancing allows vampires to obscure and erase very recent memories, and that use is essential when feeding on unempowered humans. Directly after turning, you will be in a phase commonly known as the bloodlust. During this phase, as your body adapts to the changes it's gone through, it will require much more blood, and you may find it difficult to manage those urges. Your maker should be able to help you navigate those needs within the bounds of department laws and codes of conduct. But again, if at any time you feel that you need additional guidance or support, please reach out to your local department coordinator. The department offers many resources for newly turned vampires, including in-depth classes, advisors, and even supervised feeding and trancing instruction and volunteer subjects. If any of that sounds like it would be helpful, please don't hesitate to reach out. So, we've gone over what you can do, what you feed on, and how to get it. Those are the core tenets of this introductory video, which brings us to its conclusion. We have many more instructional videos and classes that go into much more depth on any and all of these topics, as well as the other unique circumstances and challenges faced by newly turned and established vampires, and I can't wait to see you in those as well. But for now, I'll leave you with these parting reminders. Support is available. What you've gone through is one of the biggest shifts that a person can undertake, and unfortunately, not everyone who goes through it has the support systems in place to ease that transition. If you feel you don't have the support you need available to you, we have resources that could help. Unique abilities mean unique challenges. As a vampire, you have access to some of the most powerful abilities known to the magical world. But for the sake of that magical world, it is essential that increased power is tempered with increased responsibility. Before taking any action, think mindfully and critically about the effects it will have. consider your options. There is no one right way to feed as a vampire. Take into account all of the options available to you and weigh which ones are the best fit for you. Be flexible to circumstances as they arise, and just make sure that whatever you choose, it's within department guidelines for the safety of both yourself and everyone around you. And as always, but now more than ever as a vampire, please remember to keep it covert. It is the duty of all of us to keep each other safe, and as a vampire, you will face more risks to that than almost any other empowered person. Be safe, be covert, and when in doubt, we at the department are here for you. Thank you for your time and for your consideration. This message was brought to you in association with the Vampiric Lineage Affairs Division of the Department of Uniform Magical Practices.